Good afternoon, Joel.
Gaz, you're looking fit, mate. What's been going on?
I try to stay fit, working hard, but train each day.
Run me through your age again.
I'm 60.
You came in a bit shaky though. Are you right?
Oh no, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good.
You've trained. You've just trained.
I've trained. Yeah. Did doing training each day, so staying fit that keeps me sane. That's how I balance.
So you would train every day.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get to the point where I take Sundays off. And I wake up and I think, just do a little bit. But I want to get into that taking one rest day.
Yeah, you're a training addict.
I think so.
You are, aren't you?
Yeah.
Are you routine about it?
I train and I'm lucky, and this is one good thing that helped when I left the cops. I train with Johnny Lewis each morning.
Yeah.
So down there's a motley group that get down at the Oval at 5:30 each morning.
Urco?
Yeah. So that keeps me fit.
Did you go to his 80th?
Yeah.
How was that?
Oh, classic. Yeah, as you could imagine, the quietest, most humble bloke, and it's just
I could imagine
so many characters there, so many people. It was hilarious. We're actually started to give it to him because he seemed to have so many functions. We were getting tired of going to the functions.
How's the potty going? I know it's flying, but are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I am enjoying it, and I'm really, I'm into my third or fourth year of doing podcasts, and we're doing one a week, and I'm really getting a feel for it, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm finding the people basically to get on the podcast. It's someone that I'm interested in their story, and so I'm meeting some interesting people and getting some fascinating insights into a world.
So your latest episode with Lucas Williams.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it. Tell us a little bit about Lucas.
Lucas is an Indigenous man that had a rough upbringing, and you hear about his upbringing, and he talks very much in detail, very open about his upbringing. But that saw him in boys' homes and prisons up until he was about 28. And life wasn't looking too good for him. He was angry. He wanted to hurt people, and the world owed him a living type attitude. But then he found education. His mother steered him in the right direction, and he's now you could call him an academic. And
Wow.
he's doing a lot of work with Indigenous communities, understanding the Indigenous communities because he's an Indigenous man himself. And he's got that walked path that he's seen it with the trouble and life doesn't feel good. So he does a lot of work in the space of Indigenous suicide. He got an award 2019, 2018, Northern Territory for the work that he was doing in the Indigenous communities. And when there was that shooting up at Northern Territory that attracted a lot of attention, Lucas came in and worked with the community and trying to heal some of the wounds there. So impressive person.
Is he? Did you chat to him about all the dramas up at Alice Springs? Is he in talking about that?
He goes into what we would consider we're white guys from the city, remote Indigenous communities, and he made a point, and I don't think a lot of people understand this. He said like in some of the communities he goes to, English is probably the sixth language.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a different environment. There's a lot of intergenerational trauma that gets passed on, and as a white fella, I don't feel too comfortable talking about Indigenous matters.
Right.
It's more from the Indigenous people that should be talking about that. But he makes some points, and he educates me, and that's why I enjoy getting people on the podcast like that. That I learn things, and hopefully the people listening are learning things as well.
Talking about walking the path and different situations, but Todd Carney, he owns all of his actions, and he talks about that. He could add value to people who found. It was on the back of Braden Trindle when he found some trouble. And he said, well, I've walked the path. And he's now reformed in, I don't think he drinks anymore, Todd Carney. And so I do think you can learn a lot from people like that. A two-parter, so we're working backwards here, two-parter with Holly Dean Jones.
Yeah, well, what an interesting story. And, the human spirit always amazes me. Like, she was, again, tough upbringing. Like, I think her mum let her taste heroin at 14. So, this is the type of environment these people are growing up with. But she's not bitter. She ended up over in Thailand and got locked up in Thailand, sentenced to 31 years in a Thai prison. Now, to get a sense of it, I think I'm a tough guy. You guys are tough guys. How would you survive? I don't know how you survive in an environment like that. She was describing some of the things like going into the cell, which was basically a concrete box with, and I'm making these figures up, but it was like 130 or something women in there. and there wasn't enough space to lay on the floor. You had to lay on your side. One toilet for all the women there. She told a story, and I get scared when I go to the dentist, but she told a story. She had an abscess on a tooth when she's in there, and the dentist didn't turn up regularly, and no one really cared, but the face was blown up for weeks like that. And so there was someone, another prisoner, that helped the dentist. So the prisoner said, okay, hold it down and rip the tooth out. Problem was they ripped the wrong tooth out, and she had to do it again the next day. Holly is now back in, she's written a book, and it was a fascinating book, and it was great to have a chat with her. And again, life's lessons. She went down a path that in circumstances a lot of people could have found themselves in, and she's learnt a lot. And I find people that have been through those environments, they have a sort of calmness about them, but when they've been through that real confronting. Now, we could judge, she was involved in drugs, she gets what she deserves. I'm telling you, in the prison she was there, she didn't get what she deserved. It was horrendous. But there's now a calmness about her, and as you said, Joel, like people that have walked the path could probably pass this message on, that this is a thing that can happen to you.
How do you find your guests? Like, do you do some research, or do you read an article, or word of mouth?
Yeah, I a combination of all those things. So it's one path leads to another, and they'll put me in contact. I think people are comfortable. When I say people, cops are generally comfortable coming on the podcast. They know who I am and what I've done. The people that have been on the other side of the law, they were sort of tentatively taking steps, but they see that there's no sort of I'm not trying to set them up. I'm not trying to get you a gotcha moment. I'm just having a conversation with them and letting them tell the story. And then, of course, the victims, I reach out to the victims. But I'm now at the point, and I like this, like I can't complain about my job. If I find someone interesting, I go, I wouldn't mind speaking to that person. We've got a bloke coming up, Billy Moore. I watched I saw a movie years ago. It was called A Prayer Before Dying, and this was a pommy bloke. He was a kickboxer, boxer, and ended up in a Thai prison. They made a movie about it, and he started fighting in the Thai prison, and he's out now and turned his life around. And I remember watching that movie 3 or 4 years ago, and I think that'd be a fascinating bloke to speak to, and I reached out, and he agreed, and he came on the podcast, and we had a great chat.
Hey, this is pretty close to home. We're talking about the tragedy up at Westfield. You spoke to Detective Peter Moroney.
Yeah.
Was he? So why did you speak to Peter?
Peter, he's out of the cops, so he wasn't directly involved in it. But he was a counter-terrorist expert, and he's spent a lot of time in the counter-terrorist unit of New South Wales Police when they just formed it, and was involved in some huge jobs. Operation Pandennis was one of it, which was a group of terrorists from Victoria and Sydney, and they had big things planned. When I had him on the podcast, we just had that situation that occurred at Bondi. Then the following day, the stabbing of the priest. So it was an obvious topic of conversation. And Peter made some interesting points, because there was a call for, well, why? First of all, could it have been prevented? And we don't know, because it's too early in the investigation, as he discussed there. But the other point that was raised, well, what if security guards were armed? And I think he brought up some valid points there, because he said, well, as we know with training when we're in the cops, there's a lot of training that goes into having a firearm. If someone's gone in with a knife and the security guard's not trained up properly, that person could end up with the security guard's gun. Yes. So, interesting thing. So I just thought, with his knowledge of counter-terrorism and what was going on, it was worthwhile speaking to him. He's the son of the former commissioner, Ken Moroney.
Oh, right.
So policing's in his genetics, like the whole family. But it was a very, very informed chat, especially about counter-terrorism, which a lot of people we don't talk about quite often.
How did they know? Like, 'cause within less than 12 hours, they said it wasn't terrorism. How did they know to do that so quickly?
With the Bondi one, and I'm only surmising here, but it was an individual, and it was clearly mental health. He didn't have idolization thoughts. It wasn't trying to make a political statement, that type of thing. Then you had the one that happened 24 hours later with the priest, and that was declared by Karen Webb, the commissioner. I think within 12
Yeah.
hours that it is a terrorist thing
Because they've got-
his ideology and his actions were driven by a political
Right.
or religious leanings.
Yeah.
What about this one, Detective Damien Loon? And
Yep.
he played a massive role in the catching of obviously Chris Dawson, which is still
Yeah.
topical now.
Yeah, well, Chris has got his appeal going on, I think, as we speak. Damien Loon is, I like him. He's the classic detective, and I go as far as to say if you didn't have him so dogged, determined, and fixated on resolving that case wouldn't have been solved. Damien's an interesting character. We didn't work together in the police, but I certainly knew of his reputation. He's the type of detective you want on the case. He becomes, people might say obsessive. I like to, people have said that about me, but it's passion with balance. Damien knew that there was a crime being committed, and he did everything that he could, and he took it as far as he could. Other police were involved and did some good work on it, and got a result. And I think that sends out a strong message that 40 years down the track, you think you got away with it.
Yeah.
Well, just maybe you came up against the wrong detective and someone that's slightly obsessed, and away you get put away. So yeah.
Now, Gaz, you're not only doing podcasts, you're doing live shows.
Yeah.
You did a live show with Russell Oxford, who pinched Roger.
Yeah. We had it was a combination. We had Russell and Jeffrey Morgan. So Jeffrey Morgan, an Indigenous fellow, got involved, grew up around Redfern, became a bank robber, spent a lot of time in jail, and then you had Russell Oxford, the nicest, straightest guy you ever meet. So we brought them both on stage and have a chat. So it was quite funny, but. Russell, he's one of the latter jobs he did before he left. And he's worked on a whole range of jobs. He was, I looked up to him. He was a couple of years ahead of me. But locked up Roger Rogerson. And, I think everyone would have been climbing over themselves to do that. Like Roger has just brought shame on what we take pride in as detectives. And I think there was an irony to it because Roger strutted around as a tough guy. I shoot people, I do this, I do that. And then you got Russell Oxford. I'm seriously saying the world's nicest bloke. The worst I've heard him when he's cranky is say, golly geez. He is just a gentleman, just a nice human being. And I think it was almost like some sort of summary justice that Russell got to lock up Roger.
Would have they worked together?
Yeah, they knew each other.
Right.
Yeah,
and as young policemen,
Yeah.
because Rogerson we're talking about here, I understand that he won actual awards so was he other than being a crook, was he a decent copper?
He was, and I didn't work with him directly. He was coming to the tail end of his career when I was coming into my career, but people that worked with him he was charismatic, he was smart, he presented so well in the witness box, and he had this aura about him. But the moral compass had slipped way too far. And maybe he got caught up in his own persona. I don't know. I don't know what drove him, but certainly the way he finished, it showed his true colours. But from people that work with him, they said he was a very impressive detective, and he had something going for him to wield that much power. But he'd obviously crossed the line.
Now we don't like talking about other podcasts, but Joel put me onto one. Homicide with Ron Iddles.
Ron Iddles.
Did you listen to that one?
I haven't listened to it, and I'd like to say bad things about Ron Iddles, but he's a great person. Ron actually, based in Victoria, Homicide, had an awesome reputation. I didn't work with him as such. We knew each other when we were both in Homicide, but when I got trouble with the police, Ron reached out to me, and I thought it was really decent of him. And he reached out to me. We had we chatted for hours. He invited me to come and visit him or whatever. And it was good to have someone that went through the same type of thing. He had a bit of a profile in Homicide, but I got to say he's an impressive person. So I haven't listened to the podcast, but knowing Ron is very good.
Both similar demeanours. Like you know straight away, just absolute soul of the earth humans. I find with both of them.
Yeah,
and it's like yours. He's the same. The chat with Madeline West from Neighbours in February.
Madeline's a good friend of mine, and you know her as the actor. She's probably one of the more famous Australian actresses. I met her years ago, and we stayed in contact. And she reached out to me probably 2 years ago, and she talked about when she was sexually assaulted as a child, and she asked for my advice on things, someone independent on what would happen with the police. From on the not just on the basis of my advice, but what she got from the police in Victoria that did the investigation. A person that sexually assaulted her when she was very young has been put before the courts and ended up pleading guilty. We did a podcast series, Madeline and I, called Predatory, really pointing the finger at pedophiles. Like, anyone that likes a pedophile, well, wake up to yourself. Or I don't have sympathy for them, as most people don't. But the power of what Madeline did by coming forward, because it's hard. I could see the trauma that she was carrying, and her life was, for all intents and purposes, successful in every way, but she was carrying this deep pain. And the fact that someone like Madeline could come out and so openly talk about what happened to her, other people came forward.
Oh, right.
And I think it's quite inspirational in what she's done, and she's really made a difference in that area of making sure that these things don't happen as much as we can.
Did you ask her what made it finally come out? Because I often wonder, is there a moment or... Yeah, what was her reasoning?
She and look, I've spoken at length with her, so I feel comfortable in saying this. But to get the full answer, you'd have to speak to Madeline. But she realised that she was carrying all this guilt, and it's funny when you say you're a victim, but she was carrying this pain, let's say, and that the way she was living her life was, if she looked back, that was what it was about. So some of the things that she did in her life were attributed to carrying that. And she said, and I've caught up with her a bit since the verdict came down, or not the verdict, the bloke pleaded guilty. And she said she just felt like she had a big load lifted off her shoulders and carrying all that pain. So, yeah,
very brave.
It is brave, because especially a high profile person. And she came on my podcast. She spoke about it. She went on 60 Minutes and spoke about it. And full credit to her.
Now, Gaz, can I ask you this? Do you like doing the live shows?
First time I did toured around the country doing a live show, and my first gig was at Enmore Theatre on a Saturday night. Sold out Enmore Theatre on a Saturday night.
Wow!
And I was so nervous.
Yeah.
It was just around the COVID time, but I was doing with a good mate of mine called Rob Carlton, and Enmore Theatre, that's iconic.
Yeah.
I'd been there, like seen all these bands, and there I am in the dressing room downstairs, and I hear Rob doing these voice practicing, like like that. I'm there just sort of shell shocked. What the hell am I doing here on a Saturday night at Enmore Theatre? I didn't know what to do, so to dump the adrenaline, I just started shadowboxing and walked out there. And we toured the country with that, and I learnt so much from Rob. So my fear of it is not. I don't have that fear anymore.
Is he a copper, Rob?
No, he's an actor. He played Kerry Packer in Paper Giants.
Oh, okay.
You know his face. He's a classic guy, and he's been in acting his whole life. And so I was like a sponge with him touring the country. And
so he would host and ask you questions?
He would host and ask me questions. But the funny thing was, I thought it'd be sit down, Q&A, and what happened then, Gary, or why did you join the police? He goes, no, stupid, this is a theatre. We're going to take the audience on a journey. And I've gone, Jesus. and then, so I had probably, in the show, it went for 2 hours, probably had 40 minutes of monologue to deliver. Like word, tied in with this, tied in with that. I've never prepped as much as I've prepared for that. I just got it right. And I only lost my lines, train of thought once, and it was down in I think it was the Entertainment Centre in Melbourne. And it's a lonely moment when you're standing on stage just staring at those lights, and Rob sort of saved me on that. But had a lot of fun, and so I now know what I want to do. I also did a tour with Michael Francis. They wanted me to host that show. He's a mafia capo from New York. He was recognised as one of the 50 most powerful mafia blokes in the country. The Colombo crime family. He was a capo for them. At his peak, he was earning $8 million a year, and just a classic mafia dude. And so I toured with him and hosting that. So he had some interesting stories.
He would. So did he turn Or was he?
No.
How does he get away with?
He did his time in jail. He lost his aeroplanes and helicopters and boats and all that. So did the deal. But he maintains that he never rolled on anyone. He's still alive. So
that makes sense.
That's has to say something.
Gary, our show's done for the day. We've got to get you on for an hour next time, don't we, Brian?
it's
It always goes too quick.
Are you a Tigers man?
No, not South Sydney.
Yeah, Bunnies,
Well,
True Crime Tuesday. iCatch Kilos, you can get on Apple and Spotify. So plenty there, and we can't wait to get you back on, Gary. And geez, as Brian said, you're looking very, very sharp. Well done.
Oh well, thanks, guys.
Shadow
Appreciate
boxing.
it. Yeah.
What do you got? What's your? All right. What? Oh no. Right or left?
I love the straight right down the
straight
barrel.
right down the barrel. Right.
That's a money punch. That's a good one.
That's the money punch. You're the money man. We love having you on. Gary Jubelin, ladies and gentlemen. If you've missed any of that chat, we'll have it on the podcast for you on YouTube as well. So subscribe to The Run Home with Joel and Fletch.